Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kate. Happy New Year. I guess I've been away for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. I haven't posted for a while. I've been really busy with family and whatnot for Christmas. So I thought I would finish off the year by doing a 2016 in review kind of video and give you my top 10 books of the year. Actually, sorry, I don't have 10, top 9 books of the year. I'll get to that in a bit. And then I thought I'd also do a little bit of 2016 resolutions or reading goals that I have. So I'll start with my year in review. So my Goodreads challenge, I do the challenge every year. Usually my challenge is to read about 50 books. This year I decided to challenge myself a bit more and I wanted to read 60, but I didn't get anywhere near that. I read 44 books this year. So I've had a bit of a weird reading year. It hasn't been a great year for reading. I had a lot of books that were good. They were okay, they were enjoyable, but they weren't amazing. I had other years where I've read like a ton of 5-star books. Most of my books this year were 4- and 3-star books. So anyways, yeah, I read 44 out of 60 books. The longest book I read was The Black Prism by Brent Weeks, which is a fantasy book. It was okay. It wasn't enjoyable enough for me to read the rest of the series. I picked up the first one, The Black Prism, from the library, so I don't have it here to show you. I gave it 3 stars, and then I picked up the second one from the library, but I couldn't get into it, so I DNF'd that one, and I'm just not going to continue with the series. Like I said, I didn't enjoy it enough to continue, so. The shortest book I read was a graphic novel, Wonder Woman, The True Amazon by Jill Thompson, which I talked about more in my November wrap-up, which I will link down below if you want to see that. I enjoyed it. It was good. It was a good origin story, but it was nothing spectacular. But if you like Wonder Woman, it's a good graphic novel. So as for the ratings, so I had 5 books that I gave 4 stars to. I had 4 4.5-star books, 14 4-star books, 2 3.5-star books, 14 4-star books, 6 2-star books, 0 1-star books, and 3 books that I didn't finish, just because I didn't enjoy them and I wasn't going to keep reading them. So I tend not to give 1 star to books. If it's going to be a 1-star book, I just won't finish, hence the DNFs. But 2-star book is a book that I finished but didn't really enjoy. So yeah, so it was, looking at the ratings, it was an okay year to have a lot of books that are between 3 and 5 stars. That's not too bad. But I don't know, we'll see. One of my resolutions for 2017 is to stop putting off books that I really want to read, that I know that I'm probably really going to love. And I have a bad habit, which I think a lot of people have, of putting off books that I'm really excited about because I know that I'm going to love them, and I want to savor that, and I don't want to read them too soon, if that makes any sense. But I think a lot of people do that. So one of my goals for 2017 is to read books that I'm really excited about reading so that I can have a really great reading year. As for my other goals, I'd like to read all the books that I've received as gifts. So my next video is going to be my Christmas and December book haul, but I still have unread books on my shelves that are gifts from like past birthdays and past Christmases that I haven't read. There's not a ton of them, but there are some, and I'd really like to actually catch up on all those because I love getting books as gifts, but I hate feeling bad for not having read them. So I'd like to get through all of those. I'd also really like to try and read books as I purchase or receive them. So usually I don't buy like a ton of books, not month to month. Like over a year I buy quite a few books, but in a month I don't usually buy more than maybe 5 books. But I'd really like to kind of pare that down a little bit and read books that as I buy them and as I receive them, so that hopefully I can just start and get my unread books kind of under control here. I think I have over 200 unread books on my shelves, so hopefully we can start paring that down. And then I'd also really like to read a lot more nonfiction. I have quite a bit of nonfiction on my shelves here that I haven't read that I'd really like to get to. And in 2016, I only read 3 nonfiction books, so I'd like to read a lot more than that this year, and hopefully I can take part in Nonfiction November at the end of the year, so we'll see. Hopefully I can read a lot more than 3. And then one of my last goals in terms of reading is I have written down take more notes on books, but I don't know that's really the right wording for it. I don't really want to take notes as I'm reading because I think that takes you out of the reading experience. But I'd like to kind of formulate better ideas and opinions about the books that I read. So I tend to read a book, put it down, and just pick up the next one and go right into it and not really think about it too much. But with this channel, I'd like to start doing more reviews, and so I think it'd be good for me to maybe take a little bit of time after I read a book to write down my thoughts about it and kind of summarize it, and just so it kind of sticks in my head better, and then I have a more well-formulated opinion that I can give you guys about the book. And then for the channel, I'd really like to try and do 2 videos a week. I've been doing 1 video a week pretty consistently up into Christmas, until I took about those 2 weeks off. So we'll see. Hopefully I can get into at least 1, hopefully 2 videos every week for 2017. Yeah, so now that that's through, I will go through my top books of the year. So I went through all the books that I've read. So I track my books on Goodreads, and I also have a notebook that I record on the books that I've read, date started, date finished, and the rating. And so I was going through my lists, and I was having a really hard time picking out the top 10 books of the year. So I'm going to cap it at 9. Okay, so now that I've gone through kind of my year in review and my goals for next year, I thought I would go give you guys my top books of 2016. So like I mentioned earlier, I only have 9 books in my top books of the year. I was trying really hard to go through the list of books that I've read. So I track both on Goodreads for my Goodreads challenge, and I have a notebook where I track the book, date started, date finished, and my rating. So I was going through my lists, and I was trying really hard to find 10 books, but I couldn't do it. There was a couple that I really enjoyed, but I didn't think they really deserved to be in my top books of the year. So the first one, which I don't have here with me unfortunately, was a nonfiction book, and I think it was the first nonfiction that I read this year, maybe the second, and that was The Ghost Map, the story of London's most terrifying epidemic and how it changed science, cities, and the modern world, by Stephen Johnson. So I borrowed this from my dad, and I absolutely loved it. So I gave that one 4.5 stars out of 5, I think. And so it just follows a cholera outbreak in London, and how it tracks how it started, looking back on it now that we know how it started and how quickly it spread, and the men who were kind of involved in figuring out what exactly was going on and how that changed, like the title says, how that changed modern medicine and science and how we build and develop cities. So if you like nonfiction and if you have kind of a morbid curiosity about cholera and plagues, I'd highly recommend that one. The second book that I have here is also a nonfiction read, and that is At Home by Bill Bryson. It's At Home, A Short History of Private Life. This one, again, I really enjoyed. I think I gave it 4 or 4.5 stars. And it's an interesting look at kind of like the house and how different rooms in the house are used, how those how the use of those rooms changed over history, how we use the things in those rooms. So if you've ever wondered why a living room is used the way it is, or why the bathroom is used the way how the bathroom moved from outside the house to inside the house, this is a really interesting read, and I'd highly recommend it. Bill Bryson is a great writer, and he writes a lot of nonfiction on a wide array of subjects. One of his other books that I read is, I didn't read it this year, but The Mother Tongue, and that's just on the development of the English language, so that's another great one. So yeah, he's a great writer. If you're looking to kind of break into nonfiction, I think he's a good place to start. The next one I read relatively early in the year, and I was kind of on a kind of crime fiction, murder mystery kind of kick, and that was Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King. And I actually read the entire trilogy this year, but I think this one was my favorite. I didn't like the last one so much because it started to move into more of a little bit more supernatural, which was okay. It was still enjoyable, but it just wasn't what I was looking for at the time. I was looking for a more realistic crime thriller, which this absolutely is. And this one follows a detective, Bill Hodges, who's a retired detective. And one of the cases he was working on right before he retired was the Mercedes killer. And so what happened was, out of breath talking, I'm not used to talking this much. The Mercedes killer, he drove a classic Mercedes through a large crowd of people, murdering and injuring a ton of people. And that was the case that this detective, Bill Hodges, was working on before he retired, and it wasn't solved. And in his retirement, he's kind of depressed and thinking of killing himself. And then he receives a letter from the Mercedes killer that kind of eggs him on into looking for him, and he gets back into looking for this guy, and he picks up a couple friends along the way to help him. So that's a really fun, quick, easy read if you're looking for a crime thriller to read. The next one I talked about in my November wrap-up, and I absolutely adored it. I gave this one 5 stars, I think, and that is The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. I won't go too in-depth in it, but it basically follows a group of young boys who witness 5 sisters commit suicide within the span of a year. And it's a really interesting look at suicide. So yeah, I'd highly recommend this one. It's one of my favorites of the year. Obviously, it's in this video. The next one I got for my birthday from my mom and dad back in May, and I read it right away because it sounded amazing. And that is The Queen's Gambit by Walter Tevis. So this follows a young girl who is a chess prodigy. She's an orphan, and she learns how to play chess in the basement of her orphanage with the janitor, and she's amazing, and it just kind of follows her life as she grows up in the chess world. Growing up, was always a huge fan of the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer, and I loved playing chess. I'm awful at it, but I love playing it. And I just, so my dad figured I would love this, and he was right, I did. So I'd highly recommend this one. It's absolutely fantastic. The next book I read I read this past month in December. And that was The House Between the Tides by Sarah Main. I really liked this one. It kind of deals with the idea of isolation and small communities really well. But picking it up, I didn't realize it was going to be as much of a romance as it was, but it was still really enjoyable. So if you like kind of mysterious books, gothic, almost gothic in its style, and it goes between our current modern time and the early 20th century. I'd highly recommend this one. The next book is one of the books that I read, I think it was my second or third book that I picked up this year, and I read it because I wanted to watch the movie, and I still haven't watched the movie, but I absolutely adored the book. I gave it 4.5 stars, and that's The Revenant by Michael Punk. The only reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because of the way it ends. I won't spoil it if you haven't read or watched the movie. Actually, I think the movie's ending is quite a bit different from what I've been told. but it's very realistic in the way that it ends, but it's a little bit anticlimactic. And it's definitely not a Hollywood ending, so I'm not surprised at all that they changed it if they did. But it's, if you like frontier fiction or revenge stories, this is a great one. I'd highly recommend that. The next one I have here is, again, one of my December reads. It's the second last book that I read this year, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. So I really like historical fiction. I love World War II fiction. I basically sobbed through the last 40 pages of this book. I think it's pretty popular in BookTube, but for those of you that don't know, it follows two sisters who are involved in kind of the French rebellion in Nazi-occupied France during the Second World War. And it's gorgeous. It's probably a little bit exaggerated, maybe a little bit romanticized, but it's a great read. It's a lot of fun, and I'd highly recommend it. And the last one that I have here, I have owned since the day it came out, and I picked it up, and I never read it because I had the hardcover, and it's not massive, but I walk and take the bus everywhere. I don't drive, so I always carry my book with me, and carrying a hardcover in your bag around is not a lot of fun. So I tend to put off reading hardcover books, unfortunately. But this one I really did enjoy when I finally picked it up, and that was The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. And probably the only reason I did manage to pick it up this year is because I didn't actually read this edition. My dad got the paperback edition last Christmas 2015. And so he read it and really enjoyed it. So I borrowed his copy and finally got to it. But this is kind of a slow-moving, completely character-driven book, and if you'd like that, I'd highly recommend it. So yeah, thanks for watching. That was my 2016 wrap-up top 10 and 2017 resolutions. I will probably be posting my book haul either today or tomorrow. But yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next video. Thanks, bye.